Another week. Um, as I like to say, another week, another paycheck, or I guess if you get paid every 2 weeks, another week, another half a paycheck, or a quarter of a paycheck, depending on how frequently you get paid. I think most of us these days are paid on a bi-weekly basis, right? It seems to be kind of how things have been set up. Maybe I don't know. Maybe you do get paid a monthly salary, but either way, hope you got through the week okay, and you're hanging on. Um, Lots of stuff to talk about, and lots of. This is a really going to be a really cool, just comic book uh, session. So strap in. It's going to be fun. Um, as you know, I'm showing off my haul in a more sort of uh, curated fashion, uh, rather than doing it by haul, which I already did. When I show off my hauls, I do it kind of like right after we pick them up, right after we come back from the comic book shop. We go live, we show off what we have, we kind of structure it to where I'm showing off the more uh, I guess, cheaper, lesser key type books first, moving to the bigger books toward the end. Um, and we're kind of going to do follow that same format a little bit, but of course, like I mentioned, we're curating it to kind of separate this summer's hauls into like categories. And we've already done, let me see if I can get this right because I always mess it up. We started with uh, non DC books, so Marvel independent books. Then we went with DC books that are not Superman, right? So non Superman related DC books. And then last week we showed off Superman Family. So we're into the Superman books now, and we showed off Superman Family books. And I this week we are now to Superman Batman. Superman Batman gets its own category, uh, due in part to these two characters being um, sort of a yin and yang, and they really are two of the most storied in terms of longevity, right? They're two of the longest running uh, superhero characters that um, are part of the comic book history. And I don't know too many people who are collectors that are not passionate for either one or the other or both, right? So you generally have either a Superman camp, a Batman camp, um, or maybe you're a fan of both, right? Like me, I'm a fan of both. I definitely lean towards Superman. Not going to be shy about that, but Batman's um, in terms of comic books, I definitely read more Batman comic books growing up than I did Superman. And again, my love for Superman is apart from comics. It really stems back to my uh, younger days from the movies and from the Saturday morning cartoons, as well as just the cartoons that were running in syndication on my network. But we were getting a steady daily stream of the Super Friends, you know, the Justice League versus the Legion of Doom, Hanna-Barbera, you know, cartoons. So um, that's what fueled my just love and interest of the character. Anyway, we're gonna get into the specific relationship. What's up, Mr. Handsome? How you doing? Uh, hey, what's up, Indio Roamers? Romera? Sorry, can't really see. I can't really read. I'm on my phone, by the way, so it's harder to see. I used to be on a computer. Computers now dead. Uh, my Apple computer just is dead. So until I get a new computer, bear with me, please. Um, so yeah, we're gonna get into the Superman, Batman books, and this is primarily World's Finest, but it also includes just books that have both of them as the featured two characters, right? So I tried to leave out books where, you know, you might have a couple characters mixed, like, you know, like a group shot of the Justice League or something, right? It's not really focused on them. It's kind of like an ensemble type cover or book. I tried to leave those out. So really focusing on uh, the relationship that Batman and Superman have more than anything. And they have because of the storied history of these two characters, and they've been largely portrayed as like friends, um, like best friends, really. If I mean, there's no other way to put it. These two are uh, deeply care about each other, despite, you know, sort of more modern developments that try to pit them against each other. The the bulk of their history is more of them in partnership and kind of helping each other out than it is um, aimed at being adversarial. So let's get to the books. All right, we're going to just kind of ease into what we picked up this summer. And as a bonus, I'm also going to just show off a lot of my Batman Superman collection. So it's kind of like you're going to get the whole thing. You're going to see what I picked up this summer and also what I have in my collection. So again, a lot of books to kind of get through, and so strap in. It's going to be fun. All right, this one is just a really cool cover by one of my yeah, um, one of my top artists. Uh, One of my most favorite artists, I should say, and that is Jim Lee. And they picked up Dark Knight's Metal issue number 4. And I already had a copy of this issue, but we found a really just minty clean, and this is the copy. We found a minty clean copy in the dollar bins. And so I don't know about you. I just couldn't leave it there. And I knew this was a better copy than the one in my collection. So, if anything, this is again one of my favorite covers by Jim Lee because of exactly what is on the cover, right? You got these basically Jokerized. They're not even. It's like the Batman Who Laughed, Jokerized kind of Superman fighting Batman. Um, that's just too awesome of a cover to not want more copies in your collection of. Sorry for the glare. I'm trying to get it so you can really kind of see why this book is just cool. Um, so yeah, got again dollar for a really clean copy. Couldn't leave it there, even though I had the book already. I don't mind picking up doubles of stuff, especially if it's of books I like. I don't know why I do it. Um, I'm trying to be at least a little bit more systematic in my logic, uh, because this one again was absolutely flawless copy. Right? If we sent this in and come back a 9.6 at least, and so yeah, for a dollar. Not that this is going to be like a big book down the road, but I just again, we love covers like this by Jim Lee. All right, that is getting us off on the right foot right here. Did the Superman Adventures Compendium 1? Did I get the Superman Adventure Compendium 1? No, I did not. I would love to get that though. Um, I would love to get the actual animated DVD, like season one or year one or whatever it is. That would be cool because that was really, as good as Batman the animated series was, which is a classic, right? Everybody loves Batman the animated series. They decided, hey, you know what? This series is so popular, it's so well done. Um, it's like the smartest approach to DC comic characters and content that we've seen in, I think, ever in terms of animation, right? They went full steam ahead with doing Superman, giving Superman the same treatment, but it was a very different tone because, again, this ties into us talking about the relationship between Superman and Batman. But they have two very different trajectories in life, and that's what's so interesting, intriguing about their relationship. It's we all know their origin stories, and even though they're both orphans, they don't have their biological parents. Clark is raised. Uh, his family is uh, Martha and Jonathan Kent, who adopt him, and he grows up oblivious to the fact that he ever lost his parents. And whereas Bruce sees his parents murdered in front of him, and his family is the lone butler, Alfred, and it's a fairly tragic and lonely um, upbringing, and but it hardens him into wanting to become the best crime fighter, the best detective, and hone his skills physically and mentally to be able to work from the shadows and defeat bad guys. So, they have the same kind of mission, they just kind of have different approaches and backgrounds. And of course, like I said, the whole life trajectories um, very, very different. So, um, and that's the cool thing about these these two characters specifically, right? Because they are, again, their trajectories are different, but eventually they come together, right? They come together and they form a bond and friendship. So again, just I think when you think of like duos, you probably think Batman and Robin, right? Or you think, I don't know, who's another favorite? Like, I guess even to a certain degree, you could say, um, just team ups. There's just a bunch of team ups in comic books, right? But I would have to say probably the biggest duo or team up is Superman and Batman. I can't think of any team up that's more significant. And so, again, let's get to the books. This one's funny because it's not Superman Batman per se, but it is just an incredible cover by Jay Lee. What bugs me is I did get this book for in the the bargain bin. I believe this was like 50 cents or $1. But I ran into this book, a clean, like mint copy for $1. So when I saw that, I was just like, man, I could have picked up this copy. This one is not mint. It's got issues. It's got spine ticks. Um, it is what it is. But again, I got it super cheap. I think I got it for like $1. I think I got it for $1. Um, at half price books. It was in the bargain bin. So we got Batman Superman or Superman Batman, however you want to frame it. But it's this beautiful Jay Lee cover here where Catwoman and Batman are just kind of like, what are we doing here? There's a cat, black cat there, or a pair of black cats. um, and then, Batman saying, excuse me, what are you doing? Right? It's just this cool, playful cover. And again, this is during the New 52 era, so you got Superman without underpants, which is fine. They switched it back. And actually, this New 52 design is kind of what we saw in the movie, except with underpants, right? So, sure, moving forward, this will be like the concept of the suit for a whole new generation. So, not too upset about that. I'm just glad they put the underpants back on, to be honest. But cool cover there, Jay Lee cover right there. Just examining the playfulness between the two characters. What can I say about this cover? Except that it's one of my favorite Batman Superman covers. I mean, it's way up there. And I picked it up this summer. And this is not a significant book whatsoever. It's not a key of any kind, but some of the best comic book cover art that we've seen for these two characters, and that is Batman Gotham Knights number 20. This is a Brian Bolland cover, and you all know how much I love Brian Bolland. And we've seen quite a bit of Brian Bolland Batman, but we rarely see the Bolland Superman. He did a run on Superman. He's done sporadic covers for Superman and Action Comics. Never anything steady. And we've never really seen too much of like the actual suit and the look. But man, we get it. He just gives us the full, like, here he is, the cape kind of flowing in the breeze there. That is full on Superman. And I'm telling you, man, had Bolin worked on this book, man, that would just with interiors and everything, that would have been a must read just for the art. So kind of disappointed that we we didn't get more Boland on Batman, to be honest. But we've got covers like this to kind of make up for it, I guess. All right, Dale's in the house. What's up? Superman Adventures animated series and Batman. Yes, both on Blu-ray. Guy, that's the one. That's the thing I want to get. Mark Hamill is a great Joker. Yes. I have the Batman Robin Adventures on. Ooh, nice. Yeah. So like, uh, I kind of made a decision early on. Was I going to collect Batman Adventures or not? Same with the Superman Adventures. Was I going to collect Superman Adventures or not? I have like I have a couple issues from the both those runs, but I just decided no. Kind of there's a lot to collect out there, and you kind of have to pick your battles. Um, and I never really like I wasn't a kid when Batman. I was in college when Batman Adventures came on. So a lot of you are probably were kids or watching cartoons and stuff when that was on. I was in college, but I did watch it. I did watch it as an adult, and again, just it doesn't matter if you're a kid or an adult. It just hits all the right notes, and I especially enjoyed watching the Superman Adventures because when that came on, I was really intentional about okay, we got to check this out and see if it's because we loved Batman the animated series, and I just was like, man, if they approach it like they did Batman, it's got to be good. And they actually went above and beyond because they really kind of created a new origin and story and approached the characters a lot more differently than the comic books, um, which is kind of what you saw in the Batman approach as well. So it was really just sort of a unique universe they were creating um, that was distinct to the quote unquote animated continuity. So that was cool. That was really cool. Um, but yeah, that spawned like then the Justice League came, and now you have this whole animated section of DC that just like now they're going back and actually doing comic books in the like they're doing some of the older storylines for animation. So again, it's just evolved into its own animated section of Warner Brothers, which is really cool to see, I think. Um, but yeah, Bolin. We're just focusing on Bolin right now. Look at that. You're gonna see a lot of great, like I said, a lot of great Batman Superman covers. This is my entire collection. I'm just laying it all out here for you in terms of what I have related to Batman Superman. So I mean, there might be a few books I kind of left out. I tried to drag out everything, which is why I kind of hopped on late tonight. So please forgive the late start. All right. So I mentioned before we picked up a book because it was in better condition. Um, so we picked up another copy of a book because it was in better condition, and we got out of the dollar bin, right? So uh, it wasn't the only occasion this summer that I did that. We did that with this book. So, fanboy, you'll recall. I think a lot of the people who watched my channel early on, or toward the early part of as I was getting back into comics, this was one of the again early books from a half price books haul. Absolute garbage condition, but we kind of like wiped it clean. We tried to just kind of unfurl things. My previous copy had just the spine split, so we just kind of said, hey, we're gonna put this in a nice bag and board, and we're just gonna enjoy it for what it is, the incredible artwork by Neil Adams. Um, and I didn't really have any intention to pick up another copy of that book. Um, Even though it was a low grade, I didn't feel like, oh, we need to pick up a better copy or anything. I was content with having a low grade copy of that book. But lo and behold, we run into another low grade copy. But this is actually a better presenting low grade copy than my previous low grade copy. And we got this one again out of the dollar bins. Uh, and I just said, for $1, I'll pick it up. So this is my first copy here on the back of the bag and board. Generally for doubles, I do this. I just make it like so I can see the front and back. Not that the back is anything, but at least it reminds you, okay, the better copy is on the front and the worst copy is on the back. So this is my lower grade copy of World's Finest 199. And this is the part 2 of the second race between Superman and the Flash. Iconic cover because you got, you got Batman holding the finish line. I'm just assuming Robin's on the other end. But it's like here they come, and then you have a bunch of kids like, crying angry because their hero didn't win, and this kid's ecstatic. My hero won. It's like, um, it's just a comic within this on this cover. It's literally like 2 panels telling a story. So legendary Neil Adams, and again, it's a low grade copy, but it's less. Uh, it's got a smaller spine split, less wrinkles and issues, but again, they're both low grade. So for $1, though, come on, right? For $1, it's like just got a little better low grade copy of this iconic book. Iconic cover, really, because the first Superman Flash race, there's like nobody watching or nobody around, right? It's kind of like this thing where it's a contest and you're kind of just the witness or observer. This is a little bit more high profile, right? You got like people cheering and like kids watching and all that. So there you go. Bigger event. This would just become a motif now. You got, what is it? Superman Flash race. I'm sure they're on like the 30th race now or something. Um, they're racing every year for charity or something. Who knows? All right. Moving on. We've got composite. We got composite Superman. We got composite Superman. Um, what better way to kind of explore the relationship than, I believe the writer of this was, I want to say it's, look up the writer. I think I want to say it's like Wolfman or somebody. Um, I'm gonna have to look it up, but it's a well-known writer. But man, like again, this long history of the two characters, and early on, well, I shouldn't say early on, but like um, in the Silver Age, they introduced Composite Superman. Composite Superman was like you took the powers of Superman, you took the good traits of Batman, the good traits of Superman, and you molded them into like a super character, right? Um, and that was super composite Superman, and he was of course evil, and is somebody that Superman and Batman had to kind of fight and battle. But yeah, that's just a great concept for just a character, right? You're just like, hey, everybody loves Superman, everybody loves Batman. Why don't we just combine their powers or combine their strengths and create something really scary like a half Batman Superman? Oh, I wish I could say this was like creative, but then when you really think about it, it is pretty creative. Um, because like down to the, it's basically, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in terms of the design concept, right? It's just like, we're just gonna split them down the middle. All right. But yeah, World's Finest 283. Pick this one up. It's a fun cover there. Fun concept. Composite Superman. Yeah, as good of friends as these two are, they occasionally do battle and are pitted against one another. A great example here is World's Finest 143. This is, it looks like it's in Candor, an amazing adventure in Candor. So it's in the bottled city of Candor. So they're miniaturized somehow, and Superman and Batman are just mortal. They don't have any. Superman doesn't have any superpowers, and so they're armed. And now Batman's like trying to take him out. You got Robin cheering him on. You got some Kandori say, "Hey man, don't uh, don't let down your Kryptonian roots." Yeah. So that's kind of cool. Um, I forgot what I paid for this book. I think it was a couple bucks from the shop in Tacoma. I forget the name. And yeah, just a great Silver Age book there. World's Finest 143. Get you a good look there. Boom. All right, moving on. Keep on moving on. This was, I think, from our last. We had our last technically uh, uh, the book that received was a purchase, so it wasn't that last book, but this was from the last haul or physical where we went out and picked up books for the last time. And this is from Everett Comics, and I think we paid $8 for this one. I want to say $8. No, maybe $6, somewhere around there. Somewhere between $8 and $6. And I just don't know what more to say than it's a classic cover by Neil Adams, and it's world because Neil Adams does a entire cover run on World's Finest. So just a great, I mean, you want to talk about his just appreciating Neil's legacy characters. You can argue, is Neil's legacy character Superman or Batman? You could argue that. And um, I do believe Neil is on record saying he his favorite character to do is Superman. Um, but he did such an incredible run on Batman, and he does an amazing Batman, right? It's like his Superman doesn't get enough credit, but I can acknowledge why people love his Batman art because it really just is captures a whole vibe, right? There's a whole tone and vibe to uh, there's more energy, I would say, in when he does Batman than because there's like a horror element to it, and Neil Adams is great at those expressions of like terror or just like intense emotion, which usually, Batman's expressing on those incredible covers. So, um, yeah, I mean, you can make an argument for one or the other, but when they're both sharing the cover, again, I think that's why these like Neil Adams World's Finest just there's no debate. It's just like these are his legacy characters. They're both on there. And you just can, as a Neil Adams fan, you just love it. It's just like the best of the best in terms of what he draws on display in both characters. And oh man, it's a beauty. It's a beauty. I'm not too keen on this part here, this mummy character, whatever. That's fine. It's obviously somebody kind of like, kind of adjudicating this this battle. First off, let's get something straight here. Superman is choking out Batman, but we all know if Superman is putting in the energy he is, he would have snapped Batman's neck instantly. I mean, is there really? I mean, what are you struggling against here, Batman? You just would be dead, right? So that's just a funny kind of way to like. Superman should not be struggling at all. But anyway, Neil Adams kind of goes, "Hey, look, they're fighting," and that's just classic Neil Adams artwork on a comic book right there. So, World's Finest 202, Batman choking out Superman. Now, I kind of went on record. Uh, I've been on record many times, but I think uh, most most recently on a haul where I brought uh, I picked up a Neil Adams Superman book, and I talked about the similarities between Jim Lee and Neil Adams. And what's interesting is Neil Adams kind of starts out on Action Comics and Lois Lane. And then he kind of transitions into doing more on Action Comics, doing uh, more on Superboy, um, doing a couple, just a series of covers on Lois Lane, and of course, kind of delving into World's Finest and doing Superman Family and what have you. And he was doing a lot of the artwork for the Superman books. But it wouldn't be until issue Superman 204, right? Neil Adams starts his kind of cover, I guess, what would you call it? Project, cover art project on Superman starting in issue 204. Now, fast forward, so he would go from 204 to like 219 or something like that, somewhere around there, and just continue to do work on Superman throughout. He did like 233, just so many infamous and iconic covers on Superman. Uh, but what's interesting is Jim Lee also, his first work on the Superman title on volume 2 started at the 204 mark. Now, I don't know if that was intentional, um, but the fact that it's a coincidence is pretty cool. So they share that. They both started their cover work on Superman title on issues 204. One is volume one, and the other artist on volume two. The other thing these two artists have in common is they are primarily their role at DC, or Marvel, DC, whatever. And first off, both artists worked for both publishing companies, right? They worked. Um, Jim got his start at Marvel. Neil got his start at DC. Jim moved to DC, and sorry, Jim moved to doing independent books and then moved to DC, whereas Neil went from DC to doing some independent books through Charlton. Um, or actually, sorry, he went from it's not quite the same, but he went from DC to Marvel to doing Charlton, so independent. So these creators, these two iconic cover artists, uh, have done sort of the the gambit of uh, working in different arenas. So they both work for independent publishers. They both work for DC. They both work for Marvel. They were both primarily used as cover artists on a broad range of books to sell comic books, right? So they were the, uh, if you could say, like, um, primary kind of marketing gimmick to sell books. Uh, that's what you use your best artists for. And what's interesting is uh, Raf. Hey, Raf, if you're watching this, shout out to my man Raf, my Canadian compadre, hombre, hermano up in the north. Raf puts out incredible content. He has incredible insights into the industry, a very knowledgeable collector, been collecting for a long time. Guy's just so well read and well versed on the hobby, and on the history of comic books. But he put out a video recently covering the top 50 comic book artists of all time, and it's sort of put out by he basically compiled or took a composite of like three different kind of lists, and the lists all kind of varied in terms of their metrics for why the artists were ranked the way they were. I tried to understand, but it was kind of like focused on longevity, whether the artist was telling a good story, like the storytelling aspects of the artist's career. So I guess memorable stories or memorable titles. Um, the other was the art style, uh, and there was some other metric in there, but they didn't take into account like who sold the most, or how they were regarded by their peers or in the industry, right? It was just kind of like this subjective list put together by some like people who owned a comic book shop, or people who were collectors, or I don't know. The pedigree of the people that put together the list is suspect at best, but they do this list, I guess, because they curated this list and they had it published somewhere. It has some kind of, I guess, clout. Who knows? But I had real issue with Raf's kind of explanation of his rankings in the list. Um, because while I agreed with a lot of the list, the names on the list, for example, he had Bolin on there, he had Jim Lee on there, he had Neil Adams, he had, you know, who were some of the other artists I agree with? The John Byrne on there. He had John Romita Sr. He had, uh, you know, trying to remember the ones I I really, really agreed with. Yeah, I agreed with Kirby. Kirby was top. I agree with that kind of pick, I guess. Even though I don't particularly find him um, that talented. He created a lot of the characters that people loved and was part of the early world building in at Marvel and also part of the world building at DC. He created Darkseid and all these other um, uh, universal characters there at DC. So yeah, I'd agree with that statement that Kirby's, if I wouldn't say the most talented artist, but I would agree that he's one of the top creators or the top innovators or the top um, artists that contributed to the industry and the hobby. That's without a doubt. But there were people on there like Art Adams, John Romita Jr., uh, at the expense of people like Kurt Swan. Now, on the larger list, right? On the larger list, Kurt Swan, Carmine Infantino, they're on the list. But those two names did not appear on RAS 50 top artist list. And I was just like, what kind of list doesn't put like Kurt Swan, who's had a longer career than any of the artists, or as long as a career as any of the artists that was on the list? If you're measuring by longevity, he just worked on Superman books his entire career, which is fine. Like you don't have to necessarily work on like obscure kind of titles that get maybe more critical acclaim. Um, we're talking about artists, right? Not story writers. We're talking about artists. So just the absence of Swan and the inclusion of like a Magnola, uh, or even Bill Sienkiewicz. I don't, not that I have anything wrong with Bill Sienkiewicz. You can't put Sienkiewicz ahead of Jim Lee. You can't put Mike Mignola ahead of Kurt Swan and just leave Kurt Swan completely off the list. So I just had a real issue with that list. Um, and sort of the logic and some of the rankings. But anyway, going back to Jim Lee and Neil Adams. Neil Adams was number two on that list. And for all the right reasons, right? We're talking about an award winning artist, a Hall of Fame artist, a guy who pretty much worked from uh, the early 60s all the way to 2020, just was doing work. Although his volume kind of decreased, uh, post Bronze Age, he was just consistently doing work in the industry here and there. Uh, a lot in independent books, a lot for DC still, occasionally for Marvel here and there, right? He just was a presence, and he was on the con circuit, just engaging with fans, signing books and doing all that. So he's been a powerhouse. Now, albeit more, a longer career than Jim Lee. But when you measure Jim's impact, again, very short compared to Neil or any of these other artists, but in terms, this is where I say like you can achieve a lot in a short amount of time and still get the greatest moniker or still get the acknowledgement that yeah, you are a titan in the industry, right? And that's what I didn't appreciate about like Raph's list. He literally had like Jim in the like 40s, which didn't make sense to me. Um, you're talking about a guy who's created characters. He's worked across every in pretty much every role you could work as an artist, right? And right now he's the president and CEO of DC. He's essentially the Stan Lee of DC. And in my opinion, he has to be among the top artists. Now, not everybody is going to agree with that statement, but when you look at his achievements, you look at the volume of work he's done, the fact that his career is kind of like we don't know if it's, I mean, it's kind of like not toward the end, but it's also kind of around the middle if you anticipate he's going to be working in comic books for another 20 years, right? Because he's worked, what, 30 years in the industry so far? Let's just assume he works another 20 years. It's kind of like right in the middle of his projected career or his projected uh, career path or timeline. And when you take that into consideration, he's doing some of his best work right now, right? We've got a Batman Deadpool, or I think they're saying he's going to do like a Batman X Wolverine. He's going to put out a Batman Wolverine book out, meaning I called it on this channel. I called it, I said, I predict before Jim Lee retires, he's going to go back and do X-Men. Well, we're getting it now, right? We're getting it now. He's basically doing X-Men through the DC Marvel crossover. He's getting the opportunity to give fans what they haven't seen for 30 years, which is Jim Lee Wolverine, right? Um, Published, like fresh art Jim Lee Wolverine. It's not a remark, it's not some fan service thing, it's actual continuity comic book cover work. And you're going to get that soon. And I'm excited about it. I'm definitely going to get that cover. But he's doing crap like this at year 30. And he just accomplished so much early on. I think people forget, like, no, dude, he's been rocking it. He just set the bar high in his, like, year 3 or year 2, whatever it was. It was like year 4. He sold the highest number of comic books that you could sell. And then he went to launching his own, uh, basically his own studio and company through Wildstorm. He then made a crap load of money selling to that library of content to DC, and all his characters are now DC continuity characters. Wildstorm, uh, you know, uh, the Stormwatch, Gen 13. All these characters are, you're gonna see him again soon, right? He's running the show. He's not gonna let that Wildstorm content die on his watch. And then you just see a huge turnaround with DC all of a sudden. So he was, when you look back at what he's done for DC and for the content there, he was really an integral part of that. And if you don't see that and don't see that as significant as part of his role as a creator, then you're just biased against him, right? You're just like trying to diminish what he's accomplished for whatever reasons, maybe for racist reasons or just reasons you don't like him. Maybe you like Todd McFarlane better and you're just trying to find reasons to put Todd McFarlane ahead of Jim Lee, or Jack Kirby ahead of Jim Lee, whatever legends you want to put ahead of Jim Lee. You're fine to do that from a preferential standpoint, but don't deny the man his legacy, what he's done, because it's significant. And again, if you're going to recognize Neil Adams as number 2, you got to recognize Jim Lee for the same things that Neil Adams accomplished. You got to recognize the accomplishments of Jim Lee. Now you look at this cover; it's a great cover. Batman, Superman choking out Batman. But I told you the kind of the physics, the sure problematic physics of the situation here, right? If Superman were really using his strength to do what he's doing to Batman in this scenario, Batman would be dead, right? Batman would have had his neck snapped instantly. But here's the same rendition. Now, this is a book I picked up in Japan, which is like a cool book because I wanted to pick up a book with some hiragana or katakana on it, right, in Japanese language. And we got exactly that. We got the kanji and everything, but we have Batman versus Superman. It literally says Batman versus a Superman, on this here. Besto bat, what is it? Besto bao bat uto, bauto, bauto. So like bouts, best fights. Um, and I picked this up. Cool. It's still polybagged in the original thing, so it's never been opened. But it's got the Batman Superman symbol on it, and it's got, of course, the iconic Batman 610 cover on it, or 612 cover, sorry, 612 cover on it. And what more can you say about this cover, right? So if you love Neil Adams and you agree, oh yeah, he's the #2 artist and all that, and whatever, and you look at this cover and be like, yeah, just iconic, legendary. And then you look at this book and say, nah, he's number 50 on the list. He hasn't done enough. He's nowhere near Neil Adams' legendary set. Like, really? You're looking at this cover and saying that? Um, Whatever, man. I'm just saying, like, you're talking about one of the best artists of our era, and you gotta start recognizing him as one of the best of all time. From an industry hobby standpoint, guys done more in his shortened career than most of the legendary artists out there. So he should not be behind anybody. He should be up there with Neil. Um, and it should just be like a generational just comparison, right? You had Neil in the Silver Age, and you have Jim Lee in the modern age, because Jim absolutely is killing it. So yeah, interesting kind of best comic book artist list that, again, I don't agree with at all because of where Jim, and Raph even went on to say he would rank Jim higher on the list, and then he just could have done it though on the, like, don't, you know what I mean, like, the list is a list, but you gotta put your own spin on it and not give Jim the short end of the stick on that. It's your content, buddy. You gotta curate the list as you see fit. But yeah, the list had just some real blatant things missing from it. Again, Kurt Swan wasn't on the list. Carmine Infantino wasn't on the list. I do agree with Joe Kubert. That Joe Kubert was way up on the list. I agree with that. I actually agree with a lot of the ones toward the top. Just there were just a few names that didn't make sense to me, and again, just the gap between Lee and all these other mediocre artists, to be honest, just kind of set me off. So this I picked up this summer too. Actually picked up these two books, but I'm showing off the Batman Superman again. In terms of the physics of what Superman would do if he choked it out, it would just be kind of like, I'm just holding you here, and Batman would be really struggling with that. So there you go. More realistic depiction of an actual choke out than the previous one. But man, this is a triple sign. Jim Lee, Scott Williams, Alex Sinclair. And those three, man, think of what those three have accomplished in their short. I mean, it's literally, these guys are co-collaborators. They don't exclusively work with one another. Obviously, Williams is a lot with other artists. So does Alex Sinclair across the DC spectrum. But yeah, when Jim Lee says, "Hey, I'm doing the cover," he's got a team that works with him. So, and the teamwork makes the dream work. Look at that, man. Look at that guy. This is probably my favorite cover, my favorite Superman Batman cover art. I can confidently say that. I mean, this is just such an iconic cover, whether it's in English or Japanese. All right, enough of that nonsense. We're going on. We're moving on. Jim Lee. We're moving on from Jim Lee. We're going to Kurt Swan. I think Kurt Swan is taking us out. It's taking us out. Kurt Swan, the person who's left off the 50 greatest comic book artists list for whatever reasons. We are finishing with Kurt Swan work. We've got Adventure Comics 275, sort of a faded copy. Colors faded a little bit on this, but nice mid-grade book here. Adventure Comics 275. This one reprints the origin of their first meetup, kind of retold, I guess. And great cover here because it frames it through the eyes of a young Bruce Wayne and a young Clark Kent, who are obviously childhood buddies somehow, right? One lives in Gotham, one lives in Smallville, but somehow they get together on the weekends and do fun things together. Like look into the future and see that they're best friends in the future too. So there you go. The ridiculousness of the Silver Age DC books, but again, Kurt Swan giving us this just classic Superman Batman interaction there with the younger identities there. Boom. Key book, origin of Superman Batman's first team up or mission or story together. That's a cool book. That's a cool book. All right, moving right along. We've got, hey, what's up, J-Pop? Yes, I remember you. How's it going, my friend? We've got World's Finest 154. Hope you like World's Finest Batman Superman. This is another key book. It's the first appearance. I just showed you Batman and Superman as kids. They're hanging out and doing all kinds of stuff. Well, Batman, Superman, best friends. They have kids, and of course the kids are going to be like have superpowers or bad powers, right? They're going to both be like try to be like their dad. So you got the first appearance. This is the first appearance, yes, of Kal-El Jr. and Bruce Wayne Jr. They just share the names too. They're just Junior Cal or Junior Clark and Bruce Jr. And then of course, Superman's son is being a brat and kind of bullying the young son of Bruce. So this was just a cool pickup. Very high grade. Oh, I don't want to say high grade. It's a fine copy, but it's just a really nice looking fine copy. No real issues with it. A little bit of a spine split at the bottom there. No creases. It could stand to improve with a nice clean and a press as well, but man, look at that book. That is a classic, clean book right there with the date stamp and all. There you go. One of our pickups. I mentioned Composite Superman earlier. I showed it off. Well, this is the first appearance of Composite Superman. So, the origin and first appearance, and man, he's scary. Look, he's got all these powers here. I know it's reversed right now, so you can't really read it. Let me read it for you. He has more than 20 superpowers: invulnerability, invisibility, mind reading, lightning bolts, computer mind, magnetism, elasticity, triplicate bodies, mastery of elements, chameleon powers, super strength, blah, 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 anti gravity, flying disguise, x ray vision. Um, More than 20 powers, mind you. So, uh, just the funniest thing right there. They literally just split Batman Superman down the middle, and it's a composite. They just kind of put one over the other and expect that to fly. This one has a lot of issues. I think I picked this up though for several dollars. This is a low grade book for sure, but presents really nice on the front there. Back is has issues here and there. The spine is a little shot, but look at that front. Looks nice from the front. So, whew, that's a big pickup again. First appearance of Composite Superman. I think they brought Composite Superman back during the Mark Waid, Dan Mora run of World's Finest, which is as it should be, right? World's Finest. What would World's Finest be without the return of the amalgam, Superman, Batman amalgam? We're down to the best Batman Superman book pickup of the summer. And it's World's Finest 153. This is my kind of top pickup. This is the famous Robin slapping panel. It's the infamous comic book meme where Batman's slapping Robin. And this one kind of reached heights during that whole kind of meme collecting craze. And I think that was like kind of peaking during the pandemic. And then it just came way down, and I don't want to say it's affordable, but it's not like a big book, right? So I think ultimately, we'll see if this is where fans kind of want to keep collecting and picking up. But I just like it because it's this Elseworlds kind of, it's an imaginary novel, the saga of Superman versus Batman. They're one of the rare occasions they're adversarial on a cover. Actually, I shouldn't say rare, but you know what I mean. They're usually friends, and occasionally they're pitted against one another. And this is one of those occasions. But yeah, Batman's like, "Hey, you fell for my trap, and I'm using my kryptonite batarang. Now uh, you're gonna be hurting." And I love that Frank Miller just kind of stole the concept of this for his whole Dark Knight Returns, Superman versus Batman battle. Where, again, Frank Miller probably hates Superman, which is why he made him so douchey, but we don't like Frank Miller. Frank Miller was on that 50 top artists list, undeservingly so, in my opinion. He's a great creator, don't get me wrong, but an artist? Hell no. He got a pass on his artwork because he was such a good writer. So yeah, he was like, "You're such a good writer. We're gonna let you do Daredevil, and uh, we're gonna let you do all these comic books because we wouldn't give you this as just an art, like an art, you know, as an art duties. You're only getting the art duties because you can write. What's up, AJ Pop? Hello again. Um, so there you go. Those are my Batman Superman pickups. Now we're just gonna get in. We're gonna keep the party rolling. We're gonna keep the partying. So that was what I picked up from the summer, and I'm just gonna show off books that are in my collection already that I just pulled out because I was bored, and just kind of show you the whole shebang now. And got more books to. So kind of think of this as the midway point. This is part two, the Otaku collection of Batman Superman books. We were talking crossovers. Again, Jim Lee's working on a Batman Wolverine crossover book. They're going to be battling. We've never seen that in comic books. We've seen a Batman Wolverine amalgam. We've seen them kind of battle one another to a certain degree, even though it's more Lobo Wolverine in that crossover than Batman Wolverine. But we're getting the full deal, the real deal soon. Batman, Wolverine, Jim Lee, legacy characters. Look out for that book. But in the same spirit of that book, we've got Deadpool's unofficial crossover into DC here, where Joe Kelly and Ed McGuinness introduce a character not explicitly stated as Deadpool, but implied that he is Deadpool, and it's Deadpool versus Deathstroke in this annual here, Batman Superman. And this is, I think, just a must-have for comic book collectors because it, again, first appearance of Deadpool in DC Comics, unofficial. And also, you just got this great, you got this great story between Superman and Batman. They actually, again, that motif of them working together and helping each other out and kind of having this jovial, kind of, friendly, fun relationship is just on full display here in this book. So there you go. That's keeping us going here. More incredible artwork. Again, much like much like Neil Adams, who, again, unmistakably, Neil Adams is a DC artist, did his best work at DC, and without a doubt, Neil Adams' legacy characters are either Batman or Superman. But let's just put them both up there, right? The two of those characters are his legacy characters. And no debating that. You can debate whether it's Batman or Superman, but you can't debate that it's Batman and Superman. And much in that same vein, we've got Jim Lee, whose legacy characters, you could argue, are either Batman or Superman. It's kind of a preference pick. For me, it is Superman. And there's some of you who will say, no. Hey, Otaku, come on. Jim Lee's legacy characters are the X-Men because of his early work on that title and the fact that he propelled the design and look of that 90s X-Men team, which is still around today, still used today, utilized today, prompted the whole X-Men animated series, which is still playing today, and it's just an iconic period for the X-Men, right? Jim Lee, that's his legacy, and I'm not going to disagree with that. But if you look at sheer volume, the number of years, the number of covers, the number of panels, the number of works, compared to that early period, you're talking about really a 4-year span of working on a book's run versus a 20-year span, no, 25-year span, albeit it's not super consistent, but 25-year span of working on books. When you measure that legacy, you can't make the argument that X-Men, yeah, it's more memorable maybe to a lot of people from that age, but from a body of work standpoint, from, again, a cover art standpoint, from a panel volume standpoint, Jim Lee has done way more for in Batman DC related books where Batman and Superman are integrated in there versus that X-Men stuff. So I will stick by the fact that for both Neil Adams and Jim Lee, their legacy characters are these two characters. Um, Albeit I love Jim Lee's X-Men, but it's not it pales in comparison to what he's done for Superman, Batman. So there you go. Exhibit A, Exhibit B. That is some classic stuff right there. Again, Frank Miller was on that top 50 comic book artist list, and it is what it is. I think Frank Miller deserves to be on the top 50 creators list as a writer slash artist, because that's a very difficult thing to achieve, to have both the writing, the panel storytelling, and the artistic kind of blend of talent, right? Um, it's rare. You either have it's kind of like sports where you have your roles are so specialized that you have to focus on one to be really good at one. But in comic books, yeah, you have the rare occasion where the really talented artist can also write, or the really talented writer can also draw. And I put Frank Miller on the ladder of that list. He's a really great writer who can draw. And when he really tries, he can really draw well. But when he doesn't try, his art is garbage. And but this entire work. We're talking about the Dark Knight Returns here. Everybody's read it, and that is why everybody has this, I think, complicated view, or let's say warped view of Superman, because Frank Miller paints Superman's future. He basically writes that Clark sells out. He goes against his kind of code, starts being the puppet of the the kind of the enforcer for the U.S. government, fights America's wars, becomes sort of this nationalistic, superhero with an agenda that, again, selling out basically, right? He's just a big government sellout. And again, Batman's portrayed as the hero and puts Superman in his place by outsmarting him and winning this final battle by cheating, essentially, right? He kind of like gets Green Arrow to shoot a kryptonite arrow to weaken him, and then he gets in this like battle suit and just pounds away at him. Doesn't kill him, comes close to killing him, but and then he has a heart attack and has his whole scheme set up to where like Clark wouldn't figure it out, but Superman does figure it out. And yeah, their relationship here gets very contentious. Obviously, they're fighting at the end, but throughout the book, Superman's kind of like, hey man, all your vigilante shit, it's not flying with my bosses here in the government. You better knock that shit off, or I'll knock it off for you. And Batman's like, dude, what happened to you, man? I think, and then again, as much as I like this comic book, what I don't like is, again, if you just take this as like, you know, I didn't like the way he approached the Superman character, and it was very biased against this great character, and so I didn't buy into that interpretation. But so many other people who read this book came away with that impression that, man, I don't like Superman, right? Because he was just portrayed so poorly in this book. But you come away from that book like, man, I like Batman. I don't like Superman. And again, these kinds of influential works reverberate and create this whole ecosystem of like, yeah, well, Superman's great right now, but you know, his future, he becomes the biggest douche, right? He just sells out. He becomes the biggest douche. So why root for a guy like that, right? Why root for a guy who did everything right, and then when his loved ones kind of perish and he has nothing to, he just lives a passionless life. He just becomes this sort of like drone enforcer and sellout. Again, that's just so not him. And I'll never really forgive Frank Miller for taking that approach. Now, it's exciting comic book writing because it's creating drama, it's creating dilemma, right? It's creating all these dramatic points for this character relationship. But at what cost? Literally, it's uh, character homicide, which lasted up until the movie came out this year, right? Because nobody really stuck up for Superman, cared about Superman, thought he was boring, and now James Gunn resuscitates him. And I hope we can just absolutely just shit on this book now moving forward. One work, as great as it is, it's a great comic book, don't get me wrong. I love this. I read this multiple times, but it's a comic book, and it shouldn't be treated like the Bible for the characters we love, right? So move on. This is not the Superman. This is not Superman. This guy here, this poorly drawn uh, Superman here, the silhouette. Uh, that's not what's in the pages of this book should not communicate who the character is for you. If it does, then you got to read more comic books, or go watch the Christopher Reeve movie. All right, we're kind of getting into the ranting and rolling stage here, so hope everybody's still watching. This one, what more can I say? John Byrne is one of the top comic book artists on that list, and you guys know my thoughts on John Byrne. He's up there with Adams, with Ali. Here's a guy who uh, I think if I mentioned Miller's a writer who can kind of draw, or an artist who can kind of write. John Byrne is on par. I think you could say he could have been a writer on his own, and he has done comic books where he's written and other artists have penciled for him. Um, but I think ultimately Byrne's strengths are with the artwork because man, he's an artist's artist for sure. Like all the accolades you would give, Lee and Adams, I think go further for John because, again, because he can write. Uh, he's just put out some of the most iconic runs, and he's done so many characters. I mean, X-Men, Fantastic Four, uh, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. I mean, you name it, he's done it in comic books. Alpha Flight, Namor, West Coast Avengers. I mean, the yeah, he's done. Anyway, he's done a lot. So he essentially gave us the modern origin, and if he does it, introduces us to Superman in a six-part miniseries, goes over the origin and his transition into Metropolis and some of his first adventures as Superman in Metropolis. And then, of course, issue 3, he gets introduced to Batman, and the relationship starts here, the friendship starts. And man, look at that Batman there, iconic Batman there by Drip Byrne. Super cover. I got the mini book and the full size book, so boom. All right, we got some Ed Hannigan, Dick Giordano, World's Finest there, number 400, iconic milestone issue there. We're gonna kind of go zip through the World's Finest here. Getting kind of tired. Covering a lot of books here. More Neil Adams, World's Finest. More iconic Neil Adams, Martian Manhunter, World's Finest there. We got more Batman, Superman, Neil Adams, World's Finest there. This is, who's the artist on this? I want to say it's, I think it is Kurt Swan. Kurt Swan. Is that a Kurt Swan or